You're listening to The Static Broadcast. Stories recovered from dead air.
Some jobs are lonely by design. You don't talk to anyone, and you don't really get thanked. You just make sure nothing moves that isn't supposed to. I used to tell people I worked retail security, but really, I was simply watching a store that was already dead. Rows of empty mannequins, half dressed in last season's clothes. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, I realized I wasn't the only one watching. I started the job last February. Old department store downtown, one of those 3-floor giants that used to be the heart of the city. After bankruptcy, it sat empty for years, until a logistics company bought it for storage. They needed a night guard, 12 to 6. Easy money. They said the cameras were old, the motion sensors unreliable. Mostly I just walked the floors, noted damage, kept the lights on. I liked it. It was quiet and predictable. I could listen to music, talk to no one, and watch the sunrise through the cracked skylight over the perfume counter. The mannequins were everywhere, hundreds of them. Different poses, blank faces. Some still dressed, some bare, one arm missing, one eye scuffed. They didn't bother me. Until they did. It started small. One night, a mannequin at the end of the escalator was facing the wrong way. I assumed I just missed it. Wrote it down, turned it back. The next night, another head shifted. Just a little. Leaning forward, almost like it was listening. I checked the cameras. Nothing. Every frame was the same. But there were drag marks in the dust where it had been. I told myself it was the air vents, vibrations, or maybe even kids sneaking in. But there were never any signs of entry. And those things, those mannequins, were bolted to stands. So I came in early the next night, determined to catch whoever was doing it. By 2 a.m., I was in furniture when I heard a thud. I followed it to women's apparel. There was a mannequin on the floor, face down, hands pressed forward like it had tried to break its fall. I should have left right then. A few days later, I was in the security office logging maintenance reports when I found a binder labeled Staff Archive. It contained old rosters, payroll sheets, photocopies from decades ago. Most of the names had been crossed out in red ink, except one. Harold Keene, night manager. I looked him up out of curiosity. When the store closed in '97, Harold refused to leave. He locked himself inside for 6 days before police forced the doors open. But there never were any charges and no written statement. After that, employees from the old roster began disappearing one at a time. with no pattern and no trace at all. Reports stated that voicemails were recovered, Harold calling for help moving inventory, but they never came back. Police assumed they'd just left town after the layoffs, and no one ever checked the building again. At the time, I figured it was just an urban legend, a ghost story to keep kids out of the mall. But later, I started seeing those names again. I mapped the camera angles and found pockets of dark space they didn't cover. Mirrored corners, columns, storage aisles. That's where the movements always happened. One figure near the service elevator shifted a little every night, sometimes inches, sometimes a full turn. I'd move it back, review the feed. Nothing. If I left for even a minute, something changed. So I set up a tripod camera. The next morning, it was on the floor, and the mannequin was gone. It turned up 3 days later in the stairwell, sitting upright, facing the door. The blueprint showed a display archive beneath the loading dock. I didn't even know there was a basement door until I saw a light under it. It should have been locked. It wasn't. Rows of mannequins, older than the ones upstairs, dust thick on their shoulders. Their faces were too real. Tiny veins painted just beneath the surface. And every one wore a metal tag around its neck that said, "Employee." Daniel, Michelle, Rich, Nancy, all the names from the roster were here. I touched one, cold as stone. And then I saw something under the paint. Skin, pores, a scar. These weren't mannequins. These were people. When I turned, every figure had shifted, all facing me, hands slightly raised. I stepped toward the exit, slow, but the one they called Daniel moved with me, matching every step. And what happened next continues to haunt me to this day. Daniel began to speak. I didn't stop running until I hit the street. I didn't even go back for my coat or my keys. I quit the next morning. But I can still see that building from the freeway. Top floor windows dark, except for one faint flicker near the center. Like someone's still making the rounds. The city says they're renovating the old store now, turning it into lofts. You can see the lights on again, workers moving through the aisles, tearing down the walls. But every time I drive past, something feels wrong. The workers move in perfect unison. No one seems to be talking. They're dressed in the same gray coveralls, like uniforms. I told myself it's just coincidence, but last week, I noticed one of them standing by the window, perfectly still, watching the street. And I swear, I recognize Daniel's face.
Thank you for listening to the Static Broadcast, where fact fades and fiction takes over.